So natural capital, we often hear about biodiversity, we hear about ecosystem services, we hear about natural capital. And so this diagram starts us off with really from left to right. On the left is our nature, if you will, which is what biodiversity is, everything in nature, and focused herein on trees. And the service that they offer is an ecosystem service in being helping with water storage and flow regulation, which obviously benefits mankind as a form of natural capital through lowering flood risk and reducing damage, which, as we all know, can obviously help with insurance and those people that own those assets in the financial markets. So Suzanne will help us go through this a bit more, but just to let us think about what are these things.
Bonjour,
now,
vous êtes sur la messagerie Orange.
At the bottom, we can see that we have, of course, stakeholders, all of us who are out there crying for the support and help of our governments, of our citizens, and our financial services industry to actually invest in this area. But what's the role of financial services? Well, here, financial services, we have our asset owners, and our asset owners are often those insurers and those pension companies and those sovereign funds who have our money that will patiently invest over the long term into projects such as natural capital. They themselves will often use intermediaries. The intermediaries, such as asset managers and banks, will then use financial devices, essentially equity and debt, as their key vehicles to invest into projects and portfolios. And obviously we know that that was usually just driven by key financial indicators, but now more and more with ESG, people are looking at natural capital and social capital. But all of these projects, all of these portfolios that are built in financial services have to be bankable. They have to be bankable assets, because there are stakeholders who need to know that the business case adds up, the return on the investment is there, but it also, more and more, we start to think about the wider stakeholder set. So what happens? Well, a project might come along and people say, well, we need this to be low carbon. It needs to have, low impact on biodiversity. We want it to be SDG aligned, but it's got to be profitable. It's got to be bankable. And so our investee is often tasked with delivering that data in partnership with the financial services industry to define this particular area. Our investors are obviously not just as simple as my little diagram shows here. They have to perhaps prime the project, pull together all the stakeholders, and then maybe from the primary market it's securitized and sold onto the secondary market, which we as perhaps individuals invest in. It's starting to get complicated. So along comes into this area of nature, and we say, well, why should we care about this? Well, something like 50% of GDP is tied up in nature. So that definition of what's going on with nature, what impact we're having, is becoming really important to the risk profile of the financial services industry. So along come the enablers. The enablers are people who are defining the policy that we're hearing about in the news, the taxation and regulation, the innovation, the financial market infrastructure that can serve investing in this area. And these groups of people, along with data providers, are really dialing it up now to actually focus on enabling this area. One of the big challenges we found in our last workshop was that identifying where an asset is actually located in the globe, not just the corporate headquarter, what corporate entity owns that asset, what is the impact of a supply chain, is incredibly difficult to do actually with the way things are reported today. So last time we focused a lot around satellites, sensors, the role of Earth systems data, computer science, data science, and all of that being able to parse information in a new way across supply chains and feeding it into risk models, which could then be used by the financial services industry to actually do everything we started out with at the beginning. How do you actually define that project as bankable, deliver it, and deliver the returns that are expected of it? So a huge amount was our scope, and we thought, how on earth are we going to resolve that in this meeting? So what we've done is we've broken it down, and we're going to focus on these areas at the bottom. Basically, our workshops will focus on the investor and the investor case. How do I build a portfolio that serves all of those demands and deals with all those challenges? We're going to look at the role of nature. We're actually going to do one of the workshops around nature rewilding and tokenization to dip our toes into the role of crypto. And we're also going to think about, well, how do you use data in a usable way to make decisions? And that is an area where we're going to focus on scenarios, and that'll be our third workshop. So we've got a great array of people with us today. We've got people with satellite knowledge. We've got people like Sylvest and Earth Knowledge and Oxio, who can help us with systems data. Refinitiv, ElasticCloud, Red Sand Agrometrics, BX will help us with the data science and market data expertise, and more. This isn't just the small list of cars here. We've got a wider list, but also VRisk, Maplecroft, ESG Treasury, Ernst Young, Ashurst will help us with risk, legal and compliance expertise. So you're not going to be alone. There's going to be a lot of expertise here. And then Ecosolis and the Peroni Foundation helping us on the capitalization and tokenization. Moreover, Federated Hermes, Triodos, EBRD are going to provide us our banking expertise.